Welcome back to the News Review segment of the Power Breakfast Show. Senator Moses Kajwang, Deputy Governor Muranga Gakure Monyo, of course Daisy Amdany, women rights activist, and Gabriel Muduma, Governor Sanalisa, my guest this morning as we look at what's making in headlines. And now to a rather sad story that is aptly covered on the inside pages of the dailies today. The state of health in our country, and more so Nairobi County. Cholera spreading very fast. 12 more cases detected just yesterday. This at a time when the nurses are on the streets striking. Apparently no politician is talking about the nurses strike, and I want to start with the politician. Are you aware nurses are on strike?
Oh yeah, it's more than 30 days now. It's quite unfortunate, and unfortunate coming on the back of an extended strike by doctors and another strike by lecturers in public institutions. You know, we do not give a lot of prominence, we do not give a lot of attention to the creative classes, the intellectual classes, and the people who provide the basic social services in this country. We must be a country that is able to chew gum and walk. It cannot be that we are campaigning, so issues of health and issues of nurses are kept in the back burner. That is an indictment of the current government and the way we do politics and the way we run government in this country. Because I would have expected that while the politicians are busy running around seeking votes, there'll be technocrats, there'll be a civil service that would be dedicated to ensuring the delivery of services and arbitration of disputes between nurses and their employers.
One of the technocrats, a senior official in the health department in Nairobi County, was quoted as saying this cholera menace is becoming a handful because the frontline staff, the nurses, are out in the streets.
That could be, but Charles, for me, the news is not that there's cholera in Kenya, because there's always been cholera lacking in the slums, in the ghettos in this country. The news is that some cabinet secretaries fell sick, and it is suspected to be cholera. In fact, the news is that at Weston, when there was a doctors' conference, the doctors got symptoms of what they believed was cholera, but the government tried to cover it up because of political issues. Maybe for us to be much more vicious in dealing with disease in this country,
they try to cover it up for political reasons? Was there? I mean, if they can't hide it.
I can't see any other reason, Charles, because the CS for health, who is also a doctor, was contradicting the views of his colleagues who are also doctors. It was a doctors' conference, and doctors did their own self-diagnosis. They went for tests, and they said that the symptoms were consistent with cholera, and the CS denied it. Now it has happened that two other CSs have been hospitalized over what seems to be cholera.
So that
that is the news, because people have been suffering. People have been suffering. Kenyans, where I come from, we suffer from trypanosomiasis because of sesefly. It is there with us. But maybe the day the president goes to Lambwe Valley, where I was born and brought up, and is stung by a sesefly, then it will give prominence to that disease. Maybe the thing that needs to happen to some of the diseases in this country is that it should afflict us. It should afflict the deputy governor, and that's when it will be given the attention that it deserves.
Daisy, I'll come to you. Gabriel, is it so bad that it's normal for a common mwananchi to suffer the wrath of cholera until a senior Kenyan gets it? Then it becomes an issue.
Actually, that's the tragedy of class in Kenya. Senator is quite right. You know,
I've actually walked around in so many places in our ghettos, in the cities, you know, slum areas, and true to the fact, yes, you know, you'll hear cases, you know, of cholera, of, you know, TB, and many other opportunistic diseases that come with the environment and poverty. However, the tragedy, you know, and the price of our instrument today, Charles, is the fact that these diseases are still killing Kenyans. And these are diseases that can actually be eradicated. Question is, why are we not rising above board? Why don't we have the humanism that it deserves? I mean, we're in the 21st century, like Daisy was saying earlier on. I can understand when we are fighting the diseases of our time, you know, and I'm really not trying to suppress, you know, the people who are probably suffering from these conditions. No, but I think there are some diseases that we would have eradicated a long time ago. You see what Melinda and Bill Gates are trying to do. These are people who are actually set out to eradicate a disease like polio and malaria using their own resources. All right, and these are people who've seen a disease like malaria is still killing so many Africans in the 21st century. This is something that should not be happening. We have the technology, we have the know-how, we have, we've engraved ourselves in the medicinal knowledge, yet we still cannot solve a very, and I don't want to call it a simple problem, but
a perennial disease.
Exactly. We have not found the time, yet we are politicking every day. The only place where my views would kind of diverge with what Senator is talking about is the fact that we are always looking at the national government for answers. We have a devolved government, and the fact that we still have striking nurses who cannot sit down with their governors and come up with a work plan, all right, or sign a work formula is still a tragedy. I think we need to get serious when we are dealing with the lives of Kenyans. It should not sound that every time there's something happening, we must run to the national government. We have the answers at the county level. And this is why I keep, there's an example that I want to make. Just the other day when the doctors had gone on strike, and the president actually caved in, and he said, what, I am going to release this money and these doctors will be paid. You know what, Charles? That was in December. Do you know up until June, some counties had not released money to those doctors, yet they had received money
from the national government?
Yeah.
Quite interesting. Daisy, I'll give you a chance, Deputy Governor Gakure Monyo, but Daisy, I want to look at it differently. He says we have national government and we have the devolved systems. Senator Kajwang talks about we have the technocrats. As a common mwananchi, do you think you have a role in the upsurge of a disease like cholera?
Listen, first of all, I think we should be outraged that in the 21st century, in our capital city, in the strongest economy in East Africa, we are grappling with a disease called cholera. Remember, at independence, one of the clarion calls was that we wanted to deal with disease, ignorance and poverty. Now, cholera is a disease of poverty. It is a disease of sanitation. By the way, it's a simple disease.
It's a disease of ignorance.
Listen, when he's saying that it's not simple, it is actually simple. It's a sanitation issue. Cholera occurs where there is poor sanitation. Issues of disposal of fecal matter and water. So, that we are grappling with it in Nairobi, and not just in the slums. Please look at the areas now that are being cited as being prone to cholera. Jacaranda Hotel is being mentioned, San Valencia, Western Hotel. These are affluent.
Remember the first case about 2 months ago was in Karen?
Yes, in Karen. So these are affluent areas. So this shows you that we have a complete and total breakdown of public health, primary health care, which is a county issue, but also issues of water and sanitation. Now, all you need to do is just drive around the city, look at the filth all over the city. So we are talking about solid waste disposal. So this is a breakdown of services, public services. Now, for the longest time, our leaders have not bothered with those issues because when they get sick, they don't even attend to those public hospitals. They in fact fly out of the country because they cannot trust our public health system because they know it is broken. These are the same politicians who right now are on the campaign trail throwing out goodies, dishing out goodies. Nurses are not being paid. Doctors are on strike. I mean, lecturers are on strike. Nurses are on strike. But we have politicians promising free primary education, free maternal health, freebies, which is a freebie just means that government is the one that is going to pick up this bill. Yet they are not even looking at the critical factors, the issues of health, and nobody is outraged. For me, this one goes to both sides of the, whether it is both county, national, and the opposition, because nobody has stopped even the campaigns to say, excuse us, please, as a country, how is it that we are dealing with cholera? Yemen, which is a country that has been bombarded, every public service is broken down in Yemen. They are grappling with cholera. We are a functioning, an apparently functioning state. We are grappling with cholera in our capital city where we have just hosted an international event. I mean, for me, I'm like, Does anybody see the contradictions here? You know, we're talking about capturing the market on medical health. The question we should start asking is, why would anybody, this medical tourism, why would anybody want to come and be treated in Kenya if we can't even deal with a simple disease like cholera?
Deputy Governor Gakure Munyo, as you respond to this issue, as give your opinion on this issue, somebody was quoted as saying that the reason why cholera is now being spotted in Karen, in big hotels, in big places, is because the people taking care of the class that is in those big places is not taken care of. They are poor, and you know, hygiene, where they live, what they eat, and all the rest, and yet you expect them to come and serve you.
This is very, very important when we all join the dots. And join the dots so that we get a clear image of issues. We've had earlier a discussion here on nurses' strike. And you know, from the word go as early as December last year, there was a draft CBA that was presented. The nurses' leadership is in turmoil because there are two groups that lead the nurses. So they can't agree amongst themselves with what was discussed between the nurses' union, the Council of Governors, the Salaries and Remuneration Commission. They couldn't agree. They were given a draft CBA which was discussed, and they were agreeable to it. But since they are an antagonizing group of two leadership, between Panyanko and Koril and so, they have not agreed. They would have gotten back to work because what they were demanding for, they were given. Get out of the nurses' strike.
Get to cholera.
Cholera is very unfortunate. And I think cholera has been here. It's only that you and I, when you're affected, you sugarcoat it, you call it food poisoning. And that is what everybody says, food poisoning. But it's actually cholera. Basic hygiene. You and I know that when you go to the washroom, you must wash your hands. We do that. When we need to sanitize, we do that. But what about the person who is serving you? Do they observe the same basic hygiene issues? The first case of cholera,
do they live in a place where hygienic standards are maintained?
The first case of cholera was in Karen, in a wedding.
During a wedding.
During a wedding, which was the catering was done by some outside caterers who are in the neighborhood of Karen. Is Kaongware, is Kibera, is where the basic hygiene is not really observed. Western Hotel in the neighborhood of Kibera. Go to Jacaranda and San Valencia. San Valencia is just next to Kaongware. Jacaranda and Kangemi. So who are the people who handle the basic hygiene of the food we do? I'm sure if you walked into a kitchen of those places, you find maybe basic hygiene is not observed. So when the output of the food that comes out of there is bound to affect us. But what we need to do is to ensure that the whole process of hygiene, from whoever handles what, from whenever when the product is in the market, to when it goes to the freezer and then it is cooked
to the fire,
and
to the table, to your tummy.
You know, it is not cooked food that causes cholera. It's the colds, the salads, the fruits and all that. So if they are properly handled with the proper hygiene standards, then we shouldn't get this. It is news because, as Senator Kajwang has said, it has affected the up market class.
I want us to separate issues. I want us to separate the nurses' strike and now talk about standards. You have talked about standards, hygiene standards. Now we have the health inspectorate that is responsible for ensuring hygiene standards and actually inspect most of these eateries. Is that being done? I don't think so. I think we're looking at a collapse of certain public services and institutions that are tasked with certain responsibilities not taking up their responsibilities. First and foremost, there should be regular health inspections, okay? Because we cannot argue that because people live in slums, they now bring their poor hygiene standards into upmarket areas. Those upmarket areas should be certified for having certain processes that guarantee the health standards. Now, that is one of the things that is failing in this country, because Kenya as a country, we pride ourselves in tourism being one of our main foreign exchange earners. But when you look at the tourism sector in terms of standards, the standards or the institutions that are tasked with ensuring that those standards are met are not doing their duty. Their certification comes from counties. So you are supposed to be certified that the processes for sanitation are up to scratch. There are supposed to be spot checks that are done by the health inspectorate. That is not being
So there's
done.
a failure in the system.
The training, where are we training? These days people just pick. You've got an outside catering, you do a call, you pick people because we want cheap labor. So you do not meet
That's
certain standards.
exactly the
So I'm
point.
talking
We are
about
looking
a
at-
total breakdown of a chain of services and institutional breakdown. Completely.
That's exactly
so that
the
is
point.
actually what it is.
The owner of an eatery or an eating joint wants to make more profit from less input.
Correct.
So they circumvent the requirements of the law.
But the
when
state
the inspectors
agencies-
come, they bribe them.
Exactly. The state agencies are not doing their job.
That's one. Two, the person who works in a hotel near a slum lives in a slum not by choice but by condition, because you, the owner of the hotel, have chosen to pay him much less than he
Slave
deserves.
wages.
The leader who has been put in place to ensure that we have these basic services and amenities
And standards.
has disappointed the voter. And that's why I asked you, is the common man to blame?
We are all to blame, because remember, we also elect these people.
Right.
We are bribed by them.
I don't look at what they will provide, I look at what they give me now, or if they are from
And
my
we do
tribe.
not hold them to account. We do not hold them to account. Therefore, they get away with doing this. Because like now, when you start blaming the nurses simply because the nurses are on strike, demanding their rights, okay, we are not looking at who is responsible for ensuring sanitation, who is responsible for ensuring that the inspections are carried out. Is it being done? Those health inspectors themselves, are they aware of the standards? Where is the tourism board? I remember when we were growing up, there were these stars that
Classification
were
of-
classification, and you know, stars were awarded according to those classifications, and you knew that if this was a 1-star or a 2-star, 5-star, that there were certain basic standards that were met, so that the certification was awarded on the basis of those standards being upheld. So you didn't need to worry whether you were going to get cholera or whether the toilets were going to be filthy. But we have seen a complete decline and breakdown.
Because we need to move on, because we need to move on.
Charles, there's also the aspect of the the formalization or informalization of our economy. We might fall into the trap of addressing the cholera issue from an upper class or snobbish perspective. The standards that Daisy talks about happens in a formal sector. Look at the milk industry, for example, where we are saying Brookside is dominant. But how formal or informal is that sector? In fact, the informal market is much bigger than the formal market. Look at food. In Nairobi, for those of us who started from the bottom of the pyramid, you know that you'll get fresh vegetables throughout the year, whether there is sun or whether there is rain. Some of that vegetable is grown on the banks of rivers or places where the water comes from sewage. So you can standardize a formal sector, but the informal sector, you're still going to have a lot of challenges. When there was this debate about the Moranga water tunnel from where the DG comes from, one of the issues that was overlooked was, yes, we are pumping more water into Nairobi, but what is our plan to ensure that that water is drained out of Nairobi? In other words, sanitation. And that is where the focus should lie.
Hygiene.
Because hygiene, sanitation, a sewage system, it does not matter whether you're going to close Intercontinental Hotel today. The guy in Marikiti, that guy is going to feed on his githeri and avocado for lunch today. And you cannot deny him that, because
They will
that's-
interact with
yes.
somebody who is going to
Yes, and that's because that's a fuel he needs to push his mkokoteni. So we can standardize the formal market, but the food sector in the country is still very informal.
Look, this may sound a bit ideal or elitist, but I think the key word here is hygiene, and it just doesn't come about basic or physical hygiene, about what you eat, washing your hands, and everything else. I think it's also hygiene of the mind. Do you elect a leader with a clean mind, a leader who is going to make sure you have these basic services, a leader who is going to fight corruption, so that health inspectors are not easily bribed to pass a hotel as fit for preparation of food. A leader who is going to make sure that our lives, even if we are of different classes, are not so wide apart that somebody has to stay in a place where they throw fetal matter using paper bags rather than going to a decent pit latrine. It's all about hygiene. You and I, we need to think about that. But even as we move away from politics, it keeps rearing its head. And now I want us to look at the allegations by Raila Odinga on the issue of the involvement of police. I will ask my director to play us that clip, please, just before we move on.
18 days to the general election, opposition chief and NASA presidential candidate Raila Odinga has trained his guns on the National Police Service, linking it to an alleged rigging scheme. The scheme, according to Odinga, involved the establishment of a unit whose membership comprises 42 police officers recalled from various stations across the country.
Now you ask yourself, what is a special mission? Why should a police officer be forced to surrender his forces card? Then it becomes an ordinary year. Yet he is not being dismissed from the services. It means he is going to be deployed for clandestine purposes.
But the National Police Service has refuted Odinga's claims that the law enforcement agency was part of a conspiracy to frustrate his fourth shot at the presidency.
These are officers who have just moved from National Police Service to NIS through a formal procedure. They're not the first group and they're not the last.
To my knowledge, National Intelligence Service officers is another force and they're trained separately as National Intelligence officers. Then those cannot be special duties. What are those special duties?
Odinga had a month ago made similar allegations against the military and claimed soldiers were being trained for co-option into IEBC as presiding and polling clerks, claims that were denied by the Kenya Defence Forces leadership.
So we don't want our military to be involved in this electoral process. Neither do we want our police officers to agree to be used as agents of Jubilee in these elections.
I challenge Honorable Raila Odinga that if it is true, or he still believes that these officers are to be used as presiding officers, he has the names, and I think IEBC has the names of their presiding officers. They will be able to check to find out if any of these officers is going to be any polling station.
Odinga yet again linking acting Interior Affairs Cabinet Secretary Dr. Fred Matiang'i to an alleged rigging scheme. Barely a week after his appointment, he claims Matiang'i has been summoning...
There you are. Deputy Governor Gakure Monyo. 42 officers released and asked to collect their certificates from the police service and prepare for assignment of other duties.
It's important when everybody gets worried for non-issues. 42 officers against a population of 42 million. Sincerely, even if you're crying wolf, what would they do? They're not even to 47 counties. If there are 47, maybe say they have an assignment each per county. There are 42. So which of the 47 counties will miss these officers who are perceived that they will go and lead? I think it's important now NASA starts chasing issues. Because 2 weeks ago we heard them say military. Now they are saying police. If it rains, they will say now we can't access polling stations. So I think to me this is just crying wolf. 42 officers have no assignment to the thousands and thousands of presiding officers and returning clerks and all that to lead elections. And I thank the government, the police spokesman. He's challenging the NASA Fred Bearer to go further and put a case if he feels it's genuinely that there are 42 officers who are about to leave. I don't think there's anybody to worry anything. And I think Senator Kajwang, you agree with me. Only 42 cannot be a mechanism to lead the election.
Well, Charles, Daisy has challenged us to learn from the past and from our experiences. In 2007, I was in Mbita preparing to cast my vote. There was a city hopper bus that drove into Mbita and drove into several other constituencies in Kenya. The buses were ferrying policemen who were in civilian clothes. They turned out they were members of the administration police force. When the first bus landed in Bita, it attracted a lot of suspicion. And when it was discovered that these were police officers, it is unfortunate that they were attacked and one of them was lynched on the spot. And there was a repeat of similar incidents across the country. Here we are looking at some of the factors that gave rise to the violence and the madness after the 2007 general election. Raila Odinga has made it very clear that he has been in the electoral game for quite long, and sometimes as an insider, sometimes as an outsider. He understands the capacity of the state to influence elections. This is not an idle statement, because I've told you, as a private citizen, I witnessed the involvement of the police. In fact, a lot of stories around will tell you that City Hopper and George Thuo, who was the MP for the late George Thuo, was one of the persons of interest in the ICC investigations over the involvement of his company in busing police officers to various spots. Whether it is 42 or 1 or 0.5, that is out to influence the outcome of elections, that should concern. That's an allegation. I mean, and it's a very serious one, because we are talking to millions of people. Yes, Senator, 1 minute. Where you cannot talk about such an allegation without tabling proof, like the spokesman of police just said, that you need to prove that indeed these people are going to be election officials, or they are going to do this, or they are going to do A, B, C, D. Because, I mean, truth be told, when Raila Odinga speaks, there are millions of people out there who believe in what he says. And such statements need to be proven beyond any reason or doubt. Charles, please, so that you don't get me wrong, because I want the other panelists also to address the substantive issue. I am giving you a background, and I'm telling you that this is not an idle statement, because it has been seen in the past, it has happened in the past. I said this earlier, and that is why we're even going to court over these issues of IBC, issues of elections, because we do not want to subject this country to a crisis post 8th of August, and that's why we are raising the red flags early.
I think
Senator picks it, and I think the NASA team picks it from history. It has happened before.
You know, first of all, please remember that we need security officers to secure polling stations. Okay? Officially. So officially, the security agencies have a role in the electoral process. So we cannot continually cast aspersions without substantiating. The Right Honorable Raila Odinga has listed the names of these people. Their ranks, and the police spokesman has challenged him to actually go and look for where they have been assigned as polling officers. I think that by the time
actually he said as agents,
if that is true, then he must be able to substantiate that, because people have lost their lives because of those kind of allegations. Property has been destroyed. When Senator Kajwang talks about the city hopper buses being burnt and people being killed, those officers were not being deployed to rig elections. They were being deployed to secure the electoral process. So I disagree.
Let's get this clear. If the government is deploying security officers to keep peace and provide security, do they have to do it in secrecy?
Are they doing it in secrecy?
Somebody asked in 2007 there were police vehicles. Why did you have to use private trucks?
You know, while the hindsight indeed is 2020, I think let's confine ourselves to the here and now. Okay? Is it being done in secrecy? If it is being done in secrecy, can it be proven? Can these allegations be proven? We cannot just make allegations without being able to prove it, because as you have rightly said, when Honorable Odinga speaks, there are millions of people who listen to him. It will endanger the lives of any security officer who is seen to be operating within the electoral process. If already, he said that the security agents are being used.
Gabriel,
in the election.
we are in possession of an alleged letter, a copy of an alleged letter, where the names of the 42 officers, their ranks, and their positions, and I mean their stations they were serving is, and the headline, and I paraphrase, hand over your service kits,
right,
for onward special assignment. What would that be at a time like now?
Now, let me start from where the police spokesman has actually talked about that particular list. And what he said is that it is a very normal process for police officers to be deployed or redeployed from one function to another. And he has mentioned it, and he's put it very clear that this is a very normal process. The utterances by Honorable Raila Odinga are not only dangerous, but in my view come from a very dark conspiracy theory. And Senator Kajwang has actually alluded to something that I also read about the police officers that were attacked when they used private transport. It is not the first time that's happening, and he knows for sure it's not the first time it's happening. My worry and my problem is, it's when somebody of the stature of Raila Odinga goes on to make such statements and uses a very dangerous narrative to an extent of mentioning our KDF forces. Who are these people? Charles, these are people who sleep on the trenches. Heat that we and you cannot even survive in.
Could somebody be taking advantage of that to rape emotions?
Well, of course. They give you the very same blanket of security that me and you sleep under. And you wake up in the morning and question how they provide that blanket of security by claiming that they are going to rig an election.
No, but at the value point,
there's no validity in it. There's no, let me tell you, there's no validity in it. You know, the validity in it, Charles, is for you to prove that this is what is happening.
Exactly my
Failure to which it is a very dangerous allegation for you putting somebody's name out. You tell me, if personally I'm known to one of those people, and you know how politics in our country gets, and I know this person whose name has appeared there, what will hold me back from ensuring that that person is subjected to harm?
Let's give Senator Kajwang a chance.
You know, I suspect that we are basing our argument on the snippets we have seen on TV. I wish you would have looked at the NASA statement on this particular matter. Because of the 42, they are not only drawn from the National Police Service, they are drawn from other disciplines, including the KDF. So let us not be romantic about this. The 42, which the police spokesman has accepted.
Do you think NASA have to prove to Kenyans that indeed this is how these people were going to be used?
Yes.
Well, it is not. If they're going to be agents, first of all, there is no legal requirement that the list of agents must be published by a political party. That list can be provided on the day to elections. And that is our contention. They are not going to be used as presiding officers or electoral officials, but we suspect they are going to be used as agents of a party in a partisan process. You must allow us also to raise these issues early, so that post-election we do not have a situation where people are fighting because we do not ventilate. That we
cannot also create a background of acceptance.
We need to wrap up.
The police spokesman has accepted the 42. So
yes, it is that you must be able to prove that they are going to rig.
When we say 42 and provided the names, the police spokesman says, yes, it is true, 42 from across disciplines. They've been more or less discharged. If they were to be deployed to secure the elections, they would go there with their police IDs and their service kit. They've been asked to submit, to hand in their service kit.
And that is the elephant in the room. Sorry, DG, we don't have time to go on. The director is so on my case. Unfortunately, I can't even give you time to give a wrap-up comment. It was a pleasure having you people, and this discourse continues. The most important thing is the IEBC has a mandate and has the goodwill of Kenyans to ensure that Kenyans get what they deserve: free, fair, credible, and acceptable elections. Senator Moses Kajwang, Deputy Governor Gakure Monyo, Daisy Mdany, and of course Gabriel Mutuma. Always a pleasure in having you here. My name is Charles Odhiambo. Let's do this again next week on Monday. Can we have some band just to cool down this temperature?